G'day. Welcome back. I think this is actually the first one for the year, and we're starting in April. But to the HSEQ Leaders podcast, I'm John Shaddick, and today I'm joined by Peter Simpson. So, Peter, we met not too long ago at the Leaders Summit, and you've generously given up your time to join us on this and share your thoughts on the safety industry. So thank you for coming on.
John, it's my pleasure. I always enjoy talking about the safety industry and having these chats. I think it's great opportunity. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for being here again. But for the people that don't know you, tell us a little about yourself and the cliff notes of your career, as they say.
Sure. Okay. So as you introduced, I'm Peter Simpson. I work in, I guess, the broader than safety. I work in the safety, security, sustainability space. Most recently, I was the managing director and global head of safety, security, and sustainability at Standard Chartered, which is a international bank, about 100,000 people in 55 countries. So that was quite interesting. If I had to give you the summary of my career, I would say, look, it's a zigzaggy upwards progression, like climbing around the monkey bars. It hasn't been straight up. It's been all over the place. Lived and worked in a number of overseas countries in Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Thailand, London. I'm a pilot by trade. Started in general aviation, moved into the military. Spent probably 20 years in airlines, in safety and security. It's not so much environment. I was in environmental roles, but it was pretty basic back then.
Mm.
And as I said, the last 10 years have been with Standard Chartered, which I've just recently left for my next adventures and opportunities in this space.
So just jumping ahead, is that how you got into safety, like through aviation from being a pilot?
It was. Yes, it was. So look, this is going to sound very odd, and people probably won't believe this, but flying a plane as a line pilot was a bit boring. That sounds hard to believe, but
A lot of people's childhood dreams are crushed
it
right
is.
there.
It is. And when they do it and you go to the same place. But what I found really fascinating was human factors and cockpit interactions, crew resource management. This was all sort of taking off as I was joining this industry. And I loved that. Human factors, ergonomics, that sort of merges into a broader safety realm. The broader safety realm, you move from safety, health and safety, to environment, health and safety. You start touching on some of those things. Well-being comes along, mental health comes along. All of a sudden, you're doing things in the ESG space because, we're talking about social.
Yep.
Governance is something we're always doing in safety. We are such a governance-led profession. And then security gets thrown in on top of that as well. I often say that the difference between safety and security is in safety, we're trying to prevent accidents. We're trying to, things that are not deliberate, they're accidental. And in security, we're trying to prevent harm through deliberate acts, things that are deliberately being done. It's as simple as that. But at the end of the day, it's about risk management and protecting people and customers and premises and businesses.
The alphabet soup as well of a safety professional's job title, right?
Yes.
Getting added more and more letters. We're going to go, as I kind of jumped ahead here. I don't want to get too far ahead because there's more to a person as well than a professional background. So outside of work, who are you? What do you do? What are you, what's life to you outside of safety, security, risk, and the
I don't know.
alphabet?
Is that almost like a little bit like unmasking Batman or Superman's secret identity? Like, who are you outside of work? I mean, particularly for safety professionals, our work is often, our life. You are in this industry because you are passionate and you love it. And I guess interestingly, the things that I love outside of work, outside of my, my actual job I get paid to do, are not unrelated from a well-being perspective. So I love spending time outdoors. I live near the beach. I love surfing. I've already been down there this morning. It's a fantastic little swell coming through. Bit crowded.
Yeah.
Um, I live near a national park, so I get out there trail running with my wife, mountain biking in those areas. I love the outdoors. I just think that there is a real restorative element to nature, and it's just for me, it's such a balance in the well-being, particularly when you work for a big organization. We all have long days.
Mm.
We're all under stress and pressure, and that's how I guess get my energy back and find my balance.
It's funny you say that. I think I might have actually said that to you. It's me, it's when I hit the sort of side of the forest, which is where I am on a Friday or a Thursday afternoon. I just feel, you feel more relaxed, more calm. And I think that's
Mm,
everyone's obviously different, but that's my sort of thing as well. So I agree with you on that. But we talked about, obviously, as at a very high professional level, your your job does become your life in many ways. Um, but going back to the beginning, when you transitioned over
mm,
from aviation or from a pilot
mm,
to a safety professional,
mm,
what's the biggest learning? If you go back to your younger self in those early days,
mm.
what would you say to yourself?
Oh, look, the best advice I could probably give my younger self would be to use sunscreen and plan my superannuation earlier. Actually, there's probably no use going back to my younger self because I wouldn't have listened.
Yeah,
Certainly wouldn't have listened to some, now middle-aged male coming to give me advice.
yeah.
And I actually, interestingly, I was thinking about this, and I mean, we all make mistakes, we all make missteps, but in some ways, I wouldn't change them because that's what's made me who I am. I don't think I would go back and change a lot, but probably the advice I would give myself is, and I know this absolutely contradicts what I've just said. Sometimes we've got to remind ourselves it's just a job
Mm.
because we can become so enmeshed and love what we do so much that it can take over our life. We do get too involved. We become, dare I say it, too passionate. Um, we lose our objectivity, and it's a job. And I sometimes have to remind myself of that. And something I sometimes remind my staff, and I'll say, look, take some time off. It's just a job. It's going to be here when you get back. Go and look after yourself first.
My my New Year's resolution has been to make sure that I periodically take time off because in any profession it becomes all-encompassing and then you actually lose sight of things. You're absolutely right. And I think you don't realize when you're younger, not that I'm super old, right? But you don't realize when you're younger, like you can keep running at a higher pace without a break, right?
Hmm.
And
Mm,
one day you look back and you go, oh, actually, breaks are good. So no, that is good advice. But what about the profession then? What about, I know you said
mm,
you love talking about
mm,
safety profession as an industry.
mm,
You've been around a long time, and that's not saying you're not. But what would you, as an observer and a participant, what would you give
mm,
piece of advice to safety professionals
mm,
in
mm.
general?
General, and I know that this might be slightly controversial for some people, or they might. And I'd love to hear people's views on this. But safety is not an end in itself.
Mhm.
Safety is just it's part of the business, and I- it's certainly not the number one priority for any organization. And it shouldn't be. It absolutely shouldn't be. And I know that I've had staff who get very frustrated when they say, "Oh, but safety should be our number one priority." And I would point out, well, no, our number one priority should be our customers and clients and the business, making the business grow, making it profitable. We will do so through being safe. That's part of it, but we are just part of the business.
Mm.
And I would love for safety professionals to be more business minded, to think like the CFO, to think like the sales and marketing team, to be far more aware of customers and clients. There's a there was a little sort of a mantra going around my last organization, and we realized we had become what we were saying is risk focused, client aware. which is not where you want to be. And we deliberately had to switch that round to be risk aware and client focused. And that to me is, I guess, one of the pieces I'd give safety professionals, and that is we absolutely have to be aware of safety, but it is certainly not the reason that businesses exist.
Yeah. And I think, again, that could be misconstrued to being, oh, turning a blind eye to safety. That's not the case. No one is saying that,
Uh,
right?
Absolutely not.
But
And
businesses
I'll
don't
give
start
you,
up to do safety, right? To do so.
you've just stolen the example I was going to use. And I was going to say,
Sorry,
actually,
mate.
no, this is perfect segue because the example that springs to mind, I spent 20 years in airlines. There are very few industries who are more safety aware than airlines. I mean, just ask, Rain Man.
Yeah.
Um, and when we would run a safety course, we'd have, the pilots and the cabin crew or the staff in, and we'd say, what's the number one priority in this company? And they'll say, oh, it's safety. And we'd say, no, it's not. It's making money. And I'd use the analogy or the example and say, you know what, our founders, and however old we were, I'll say 100 years, 100 years ago, the two founders of this airline did not sit round a table and think, I'd love to start a business and I want to be as absolutely safe as I can be. What will I do? They sat around a table and said, we need to make some money. How are we going to go and do it? And that's what the business exists for. And you do that through, you know, great customer service and all that. You do it through being safe. Absolutely. Particularly in the airline industry, you
And
can't
it makes
afford not to
sense
be.
commercially to be safe, right?
Yeah. But it is not the driving force behind everything that goes on. It is part of what the business needs to do.
Yeah, as multiple different functions as well, just as
Mm,
finance, operations, sales, etc.
absolutely. Yep.
So you've been obviously aviation and then banking in a global role.
Mm,
So not just Australia, and as you said, all around the world. So you've got cultural differences there as well. But when
mm,
building a team, and when hiring, what do you look for? I mean, obviously it's dependent, but what's a couple of things that really stand
mm,
out?
mm. Look, again, you've literally just led into my answer. If anyone's listening,
Sorry, I can take my team out.
I promise, if anyone's listening, I promise John and I have not discussed it. I was going to say the number one thing I look for is diversity. And diversity could mean diversity of background, of the industries in which people come from, the locations, their experience, their professional skills. Diversity can mean so many things, but I want to bring diversity in because the last thing I need is a department of cookie cutters of myself. Because I think in a certain way, and most middle-aged white Western men will think in a not too dissimilar way. And that's not healthy. I need all sorts of. I remember doing a well-being program. We were rolling out a well-being program, and I can't remember the African country. I'm just going to say it could have been in Nigeria. And someone said to me, "Oh, what does this need to look like?" And I said, "I've got no idea because I'm not a young female in Nigeria. We're going to have to go and ask that person what they need from a well-being program, not what I need from my cushy office in Australia."
Yeah, yeah. And no scale of reference or a very limited scale of reference to that as well, right? In comparison. And I think when we talk about diversity as well, it's one thing that I sort of always mention when companies talk proudly
Mm,
about diversity and inclusion. It's great to see companies that have made advantage or made moves in
mm,
that space. But I think diversity as well is more than necessarily gender, right? And background. There's so much more
yep,
to it, like from
yep,
education background,
hmm
age,
mm,
background. Like diversity of thought comes more than from just one or two metrics as well.
yep. And it helps you become client focused. And again, another really simple example, I was talking to, this is before the US election when they're having the runoffs. And I was on a hike in Europe and going from hut to hut, and I bumped into a US lawyer at a number of these huts, and we were chatting, and he said his law firm he wasn't interested in diversity and inclusion. It was all a load of rubbish. And his law firm, full of white middle-aged males, was exactly what they needed because, and this is the catch, because that's their client base.
Mm.
And I just went, exactly. But if you wanted to bring in the other 50% of the population, which are females,
Mm.
and I don't know the statistics in the US, but I'll say whatever 20 or 30% that is the Black American or
Mm.
whatever it might be, you're going to need to bring those staff on who can relate to those clients and customers. You're just missing out on customer. You're not doing the best customer experience, and you're not growing your business unless you have diversity amongst those that are in your team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So leading a team then,
Mm,
what is leadership? I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different
mm,
leaders in your time, but what is leadership to you and how do
yeah.
you?
Mm. Um, I saw a fantastic quote on this, and I actually put this onto my LinkedIn because this resonated so well with me. And it said that good leaders inspire people to trust them,
Mm.
but great leaders inspire people to trust themselves. And that to me is what leadership is about. It's leadership is not about what I'm doing. It's about what I can, what my team are doing and what I can do for others. And by flipping it round, then suddenly I'm not talking about what I can do as one person. I'm talking about what multiple people can do, multiple brains, multiple arms and legs, multiple resources. So it's really about empowering others, trusting others.
Mm.
Um, I like to think my team work with me, and my team could be, that could be stakeholders and all sorts of things, but it's really about having my team work with me, not for me.
Yeah. And
I was going to say they're just as important. They're more important because there's more of them.
well, that's an interesting part, right? If they're working for you, that's not a leader then, right?
Hmm.
That's not servant leadership or anything like that,
Mm,
but your role, right, at the top of the tree is to direct, motivate, and have people delivering on those outcomes, right? That's leadership.
absolutely. It's about, surrounding yourself, hiring the
Mm.
best people you can. The people who are bigger and better or have a skill that, that I don't have, or, who have a better future or I see them having a better future than me.
Yeah.
They are the people that are going to succeed. And when they're succeeding, I'm succeeding, and vice versa. When I'm succeeding, they're succeeding.
And yeah, I guess that's the not having the intimidation of other people's capability.
And if that's and if you are, then you're stuck in that hierarchy of management, and it's probably getting a bit toxic, or at least unhelpful and unproductive in that space.
So you've obviously developed this as well through your career, but who's been an influence on your career and professional life in that sense from as you've developed?
Mm. Um, I've had two people that have had a real influence on what I've done. One of them was actually one of my undergraduates and postgraduate university professors. And he's the one who gave me this passion when I was a pilot to move into human factors and safety. So I sort of have when I look back and go, how did I get into this space? That professor was I guess, the inspiration, that the person who drove me into it. And then when I look at sort of, as I progressed in my career, one of the people there was my manager when I worked in Cathay Pacific in Hong Kong. And he really just showed me the value of being yourself and being authentic and caring for others, putting others first. And it made the department and the airline better. And
Mm.
I saw it firsthand. Wow, look at this guy. He's actually putting me first, or the team first, or that colleague first. He's not doing this just to serve himself. And our department became a bigger, better, more productive, more trustworthy place to be.
Authenticity. That's a great. First of all, it's interesting around the education piece. I haven't actually heard that from an educator to motivate someone to take a path, which is great. That's
Mm,
great. You've had that experience, and then also authenticity. And care. Authenticity is one of our values, right? And I think that's so important to be able to bring your authentic self to work every day, right?
yeah,
So you're
yeah.
still operating I guess within a framework, right? But you're allowed to be your authentic self rather
Mm.
than trying to be someone else. I just
And
imagine that, you know?
yeah, and you just think about it with your own. I mean, if you have, if you have your own boss or someone more senior than you want them to be their authentic selves. You want them to be generous. You want them to be kind. You want them to be thinking of these things. Um, and therefore, clearly, whether know it or not, that's what people in your team want of you as well.
Absolutely.
Is it
Absolutely.
is it the what do they call it, the golden rule? Treat others as you wish to be treated. It's
Right?
as simple as that.
Pretty much the basis of most religions and society and laws, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, as a profession, you've seen changes, and I think it's
Mm,
an emerging profession. Where do you see it? Where do you see it
mm.
evolving?
I, I mean, I just look. You look back historically, health and safety was very physical, and it was really about not killing people
Hmm.
or avoiding major injuries, very physical in nature. That physical over time, legislation also, pushed it to include mental. So health and safety became mental and physical. We've moved into the well-being space. Um, Health and safety has sort of sometimes morphed into HSE or EHS with that environmental piece. If we're talking about well-being and mental health, we're in that S world of ESG, that social part of ESG. So I see the health and safety world really evolving and blurring with what's happening in HR and what's happening in the sustainability and ESG space. And I guess one of the sort of the proofs of that is that health and safety could quite easily sit in a HR department. It could sit in an operational department, depending on what sort of business or how you're set up. But it's really that's where it can start adding value. I don't actually think it adds value in terms of preventing fatalities or major injuries. That's a given. That's
Hmm.
not a value add. That's like just a cost save or just a given. It's a hygiene factor. So I really see where it advancing is where it starts to move into that value proposition where we're influencing productivity and
Hmm.
employee value proposition and net promoter score and those sorts of things. And then of course the other one, just I guess far more pragmatically, is AI and the way in which that is going to really shape us going forwards in this industry.
I'll come to the AI part in a second, but
Hmm.
it is interesting. I mean, look, I think ESG is going to be driving it from at a higher level, right? But it's
Hmm.
interesting where we see the separation of HR and safety. It was always sort of a joint function for many years, and
Hmm.
in many businesses, not all businesses,
Mm,
but many businesses. And now you're actually seeing that fusion coming back together, right?
yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. It is around
Mm,
that mental health and mental well-being part where all of a sudden is that a safety investigation? Is this a HR investigation? Or
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then we move into that world of psychosocial risk.
right?
And it's got the word risk in it. So people are like, oh, health and safety team, you guys do risk. You're going to be good at this. And that's true. We know how to do risk and manage risk and the hierarchies and all and that really well. But a lot of the root issues in psychosocial risk are HR traditionally in the HR world in terms of
Hmm.
bullying, harassment, job design, workloads. So this is really, I think the leaders of in the health and safety world in the future are going to become very comfortable with working in this blurred space between HR and health and safety. Every company is going to be different, but that's proof that there's no single right answer.
And it's always evolving. And then
Mm,
coming back to AI, look, it gets thrown around a lot. I get probably 20 emails a day having AI products tried to be sold to me, AI in recruitment. But where do you see AI then in safety?
Look, I guess this is going to be quite a short conversation because I'm I am absolutely learning this myself and exploring it.
Mm.
I guess I'm cognizant enough to know from what I've seen and heard of its amazing abilities. And I'm now experimenting and I'm listening to all the podcasts I can. I'm reading all the McKinsey and HBR I can. I'm attending all the seminars I can, often in the CISO, cyber world, to just understand it more. And both from a business perspective and what it can do from a business, but also what it can do from a personal productivity point of view.
Absolutely. And I think that's also a really good answer. Yeah, I think it's not one of those of I think at the moment people haven't fully understood it, and it's like, oh, we've got the AIs to do it. It's like, we do safety. And I think there's more to be used than just
Mm.
ChatGPT
Yeah,
answers, right? Like,
yeah,
but inevitably it will have
yeah.
effects. It will
Look,
increase productivity, right? If you,
look, I'll just give you some absolutely super simple practical examples I've seen. You know, AI or whoever you're talking to, ChatGPT, Siri, whoever you've got there, make me a safety poster that, emphasizes, I don't know, slips, trips, and falls in the office. Okay, now I want one for the warehouse. Boom, 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 it does it. You don't have to go and spend whatever of, I don't know, $5,000,
marketing,
$10,000 with a professional
yeah,
firm. No, I don't like the color. Make it our corporate colors, which are whatever, purple and green, and it's just amazing. And
yeah.
suddenly there's a huge cost save, and you've just designed a poster in 15, I don't know, whatever, 15, 20 minutes instead of it taking weeks and weeks. You go back and forwards
Back
and
and forth, back
payments
and
and
forth,
POs and
brainstorming
mm,
sessions,
yeah.
yeah,
And you
thousands of
know what?
dollars
You can
later. Yeah.
and you can put it up, and if people say, I don't like that, no problem. It's
Yeah.
it's it's free. It's free to change. It's cost nothing.
And
So just
you haven't gone and spent tens of thousands of dollars out of your budget to try to
exactly.
find a
Yep.
PO for it. Yeah. Well, Peter, thank you very much for coming on. It's I told you I liked you're allowed to be controversial, and I think that people will resonate, and people will like it, and I will invite anyone to reach out to Peter. You've got some really good stuff.
Mm.
Or LinkedIn as well. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the comment thing. But no, thank you very, very much for coming on. It's very refreshing, and for the first one of 2025 too.
Great. Look, I'm glad I could be first for the year. That's fantastic. And again, thanks for having me, John. I've loved the chat.
Cheers, mate.